2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Martin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
But when that happened, I bet what were your thoughts?
Gosh. So I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was serving in the Young Women's Presidency. I had just barely gotten released. He was the Young Men's President. It was a Sunday. I had one of my, quote, headaches, so I was home, really just not wanting to go to church because I was living a lie going. And a detective called me and said he wanted to meet with me about whatever, and I was like, oh, okay, that's great, whatever. And so I went. This was on a Sunday, so it was super weird. The whole thing was so weird. Called me to come to the station, yeah. And so I went in with my daughter.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking about why you were going?
Well, I'm unique. I can get away with anything.
I'll talk my way out of this.
Look at my charm. Yeah, I can smile and skip by. I got through treatment in 28 days, and I can do that again and just talk my way. I mean, he knows better than anyone. I manipulated the crap out of him. But I went in and it was just in this little room, and he was just talking to me. And then he showed me the fax thing for the prescription fraud. And I was like, my heart just sunk. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go to court and all this stuff. And I almost felt like that it was fine because I had my daughter with me, but they were like, we're arresting you. And I was like, right now? I just remember feeling so much like I was different than other people. Like, he's not going to arrest me. I have my daughter. So he got a call at church. Just horrible. Had to come down.
He's your husband.
My husband, Brian, yeah.
And we're going to hear from Brian in just a second.
He got a call, and he came down and he picked my daughter up, and I went to jail for 6 days. It was I think that's when the reality of all of it set in, and it was almost kind of this is crazy to say, but I almost was like, okay, everyone knows my life. I mean, I did feel like my life is ruined. I actually wrote about this in a meditation the other day, was all of our titles that we give ourselves. And I think a big thing for me was I like to not label, but title myself. And my best friend and I were talking about the fact that I still call myself an addict. And to label yourself, her husband has a hard time with being labeled forever as that I label myself forever as an addict. And I'm thinking of that, and I'm like, I label myself as a mother, a friend, a wife, four-sport athlete. I've labeled myself this whole time, my whole life as these titles. And I just remember being in that jail cell and being like, all of my titles are ripped from me because I've ruined everything. My whole life is over. It was very, very humbling.
Mine was drunk. That was the title that I gave myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one that wiped away all of the stuff that I've done prior.
Yeah.
Was drunk. Mm-hmm. And I think through recovery you learn that it doesn't wipe those things away.
Yeah.
You still are a mother. You still are an athlete. You're still all those things. But that one was right in front of your face.
Yeah.
And you had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so there you are in jail for 6 days, thinking your whole world came to an end.
Yeah.
For many, we talk about a rock bottom on this podcast. Is that your rock bottom?
Definitely. I think that definitely was the moment within that first week, because in jail I made a suicide plan. So my rock bottom was incorporated with that. I did get out, and I knew I was going to go home to my house, and I knew that my husband wouldn't let me have my daughter. And so I knew she would be at his mom's or my mom's or whatever, and I'd be home. And so I had it all planned out that I was going to just get in the tub and take the gun so it wouldn't be super messy. There's the perfectionism coming in, so somebody wouldn't have to like clean up a huge mess. And the next day, once he went to work, I would kill myself. And the God's hand in that was him saying, "You're not coming home. You're going wherever you're going to go, but you're not coming home." So I went to my mom's. Didn't have access to that, and I ended up having a meeting with my counselor, Rick, at Action Recovery Group that very next day, and which was a conversation that saved my life for sure. It was just me saying, I'm ruined. All of this is ruined. And that's when we had a big conversation. I had a big conversation with Rick about closing all the back doors, those back doors that I was telling you about. That
I'm going to let you catch your breath here for 1 second, because I want to bring you in, Brian.
Okay.
Why wouldn't you let her home?
Oh, man. Where does the list begin? It was just constant fighting. It was constant lying. And she said constant manipulating. It was every time we were around, I was always suspecting her being high. Like, okay, you're high. Where are you getting pills from? Where are you hiding them? Where are they? How dare you? You know, it was constantly. So when she got arrested, my phone kept ringing, answered it. It's like, hey, it's the police. We've got your daughter. You need to come pick her up. I'm just like, oh. And I was kind of relieved. I'm like, good. Because it's something had to happen. Because the way we were going, we were done. Like, I was just done with this. It felt like my life was ruined. I was just constantly having to babysit 2 kids, like her and my daughter. And I didn't trust her with my daughter while I was at work because who knows what was going on. And so when that finally happened and I went and picked her up, the cop was talking to me, and he's like, well, we think we have enough evidence that we're gonna arrest her. So I'm like, good. I'm like, you should. I told him, I'm like, you should test her for this is what she's been stealing. I've been getting phone calls from family, friends, and nothing. It's just out of control. So when she got out, I was super bitter, super mad. I'm just like, you got what you deserve. Now you can't come home. Don't bother us. Like, go figure your life out.
Sounds like that started to return an element of control to your life.
Yeah, it felt exactly. I had zero control. My life was spiraling out of control for a decision I never made, which I had a really hard time coming to grips with. Mm-hmm. I'm doing everything right. I'm trying to be the best person I can be, and she's off doing what she wants to do, and it was directly affecting me, and it killed me.
It's interesting, Casey, to see the comparison between both of them telling that version of the story, right? So you were doing your thing and using and trying to feel like I can stay on top of this and I can keep things under control, while at the same time it sounds like you were frantically running around feeling more and more like things were spiraling out of control. And when that day came of the arrest, it sent you to a reality, which we'll talk about in a second, which is common for perfectionist thinkers, but it started to ground you a little bit more, didn't it, Brian? Gave you kind of a return of like, I think a lot of listeners might say, oh, that sounds uncaring, that he was saying, good, arrest her. But that was the stabilization you needed to be able to take care of your family, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't the first time. I've called the cops on her.
Let's hear that.
I was
just... But on the same thing, I was very empathetic towards Lizzy because I've been where she is.
Well, yeah.
And I mean, I started to get teary-eyed when she told that story.
Of
because
course.
I've been desperate. I've been down. The jig is up. I've been to that point, and I go,
right.
and when she says she felt that relief, there's like,
yeah.
I had that release, and I was like,
sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's empathy for both people. That's what's so great about having the two of you come on as a couple and talk about both of your experiences with this, and you're both going through it, but having very different experiences, both difficult, and we can have empathy for both.
Same story.
What you're both going through.
Yeah.
I think, for a perfectionist person, a very competitive person, when you finally hit that wall, one of the negatives, being a competitive person is a cool thing. Those are the people that entertain us, that make things happen in this world, that make the achievements, they're fun. But every positive quality we have can have a negative side effect. And the negative side effect is all or nothing thinking. Black and white, all or nothing. So you're such a well-accomplished, great person, and you're doing well, you have a good marriage, all these things, but because you got arrested, then you went straight to this nothing. Now I'm nothing, now I have nothing.
True.
Creates kind of a hopelessness, and hopelessness is kind of that root to suicidal thinking.
Mm-hmm.
If it can't get better, then I ought to check out. And there's so many people will be relating to this story of yours, because listening to this story, because so many people have been there where you finally feel hopeless and you start to wonder, how can I escape this?
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting you say hope, because I think it was 2 weeks after I got out and I had met with my counselor. He had met with my counselor. We met with him together, and then we made these pros and cons lists. We were doing all these things, and we still felt like we were kind of underwater. And
what were the pros and cons for? For keeping the marriage?
Going to a residential treatment or center, or going back to Action Recovery as an intensive outpatient program, doing individual therapy versus a group therapy, just kind of pros and cons of that, how we were going to, if we were going to try to make this work. And I just said to him, I think we need to go to a meeting. So we went to the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints 12-step meeting, and so interesting because it was hope. It was step 2. And I just remember that whole time we were got back in the car and we were we lost hope. That's our problem. We lost hope and faith in something greater than us that can pull us out. And I think that he should share this, but he got an answer to his prayer after that. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
After the hope meeting?
And I fought her, going to a meeting. I'm what's the point? It's just going to waste our time. You're going to keep using. So I went in with a very bad attitude.
Hopeless attitude.
Hopeless, bad, all around. So we went to the meeting, and it was really good. And it was the first time that I myself had ever been to any kind of a group therapy meeting, if you will. And it was really awesome to be around other people, to hear success stories. And that's immediately that gave me hope. So prior to this, it was almost like what you were referring to. Pros and cons of staying married, that was constantly on my mind. I don't see this working out. She's just going to be her, and I can't live like this anymore. And so I prayed, and I prayed harder than I probably ever had in my life. What do I do? I pride myself on being a good person and knowing what's right, and I legitimately was just frozen in place. I did not know what to do. And it came to me that I just randomly just started reading, and I think it was the news, on Yahoo or something, and something came up, some study about divorce and the effects it has on family and individuals and whatever. And immediately I just got the feeling okay, we're going to work this out. She is my wife. I loved her to death. When we first met, we've got to work this out. I know she's in there somewhere, and I know it's a bad thing to say that the addict changes the person, but it really, truly did.
Yeah.
She was not my wife that I married in her active addiction. And so I just made that decision, and that was probably my very first step in actually moving into recovery, was saying, okay, I made a decision, I'm staying with you, so now what? And I still don't feel like I'm a person to talk to about this. I feel like I'm totally clueless. I just totally winged it, and now we're here. But
No, but that's when he got involved.
Something to be said for doing some soul searching, whether it's praying or meditating on issues, and following the intuition that you have. It takes courage to follow one's intuition. And I think what you're describing is that, it all came together as you read that article and you had a moment of clarity, an epiphany, an answer to prayer, whatever you want to refer to it as, and you followed that. And I think that's part of most people's success story in life, is being grounded and searching for answers and then having the courage to follow the intuition that comes.
Yeah.
And when you said you don't feel like you're somebody who should be talking, you're definitely somebody who should be talking, because I think a lot of marriages don't survive an addiction. And the fact that you guys have figured out what works for you guys is giving others out there hope. But you said something, Lizzy, that I think is a key to why it is working. You said that's when he got involved.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying when you're in your addiction that the other spouse is not involved, but I don't think that they're on the same page, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we've learned by interviewing people and talking to people in my practice, the spouse who doesn't have the addiction has a different problem with the addiction.
Yeah.
And so when you went to, I could just tell by you telling the story, Brian, when Lizzy went to jail, there was a sense of relief. Like you were getting a break from the stress of the addiction, the way it was affecting you. And so it's a lot to be able to say, okay, I'm back in this. I'm gonna help you with it.
Yeah. Well, when we met with the counselor, Rick, after I had gotten out of jail, he said, "This is the problem: is if she goes back into recovery and she takes this on, she's going to only go up. She's going to continually work on herself, and she's only going to improve. And she's going to go up and away from you. The problem is that he didn't reprimand him by any means, because he wasn't doing anything wrong. But the way that we could make it work, and the fact that he had chosen to stay after everyone in the world telling him to get a divorce, the only way he was going to be able to cling to the marriage and that it really would be fueled and work was if he worked on himself. So instead of me growing away and up and him staying stagnant, it was he embraced recovery. He started to come to continuing care with me and began to learn about himself. And it wasn't, when I say he got involved. He worked the 12 steps. He went to meetings, and he didn't go to the meetings with me. He went to the recovery support meetings, family support group for the church's program, and it's kind of like the Al-Anon for AA. But yeah, he's a facilitator in that program, and it was like once that happened, it was something clicked. The whole world kind of fell away from us, and we were us. We kind of had to choose recovery and each other, and then everything else will work out how it's going to.
Sounds like maybe your friends and family all had opinions about what you should be doing.
Oh, yeah. I got opinions everywhere, and unsolicited opinions. Those are
the best kind.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. At first,
you know what you should do.
Yeah, exactly.
But at first you loved it because everybody was on your team.
No, I never did love it.
Oh.
I would get invited to family dinner or something, and while she was in jail, like, hey, let's go out to dinner. And then it's the last thing I want to talk about is my effed up life. I just want to go and just relax. And it's like, this is what you need to do. So-and-so knew so-and-so, and this is what happened. You need to do this.
Divorce attorneys.
It was just constant. It wasn't even just divorce. It was just, this is what's going to happen. Guaranteed,
She'll never get better.
Yeah.
That was the constant. Yeah. There was no hope.
But why do you think these are people that loved you?
Yeah.
And I assume loved Lizzy.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that? Seems pretty dire advice.
It is, and I think
where does that come from?
Well, it came from both of our families. Her family even gave me advice. She has a sister who is currently in the addiction realm.
She's 2 years older.
2 years older than her.
Meth.
Yeah, everything. Just got out of prison not too long ago. So that her family had already been through this, and they're like, you know what?
And that was their end result, was my sister. Who
never
been in and out of jail since 18.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was.
Yeah, I think sometimes, I guess what I'm hinting at is sometimes that really harsh advice, get a divorce, she'll never get better. It actually comes from a place of both love and fear.
Yeah.
You know, they see like let's try to salvage what we can here. You've got kids to take care of, and you know, or one kid at the time. I think looking back on it, we can kind of have a little empathy for family too. They probably look at how the two of you are doing now and are very glad you didn't take their advice.
Hey, you're listening to Project Recovery. More with Brian and Lizzy coming up.
A gun in the face.
Then all of a sudden they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
Started 2 years of horror for an American in Venezuela.
They said, you need to give us your phone and get ready because you're coming with us.
I'm Becky Bruce, and I spent a year researching and piecing together Josh and Tammy Holt's story about their ordeal in a notorious prison.
That's when everything started to turn bad. We had another pound on the door. Boom, boom, boom. And there was the police once again.
You can binge all of the episodes of Hope in Darkness on kslpodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Has anyone admitted that?
Yes, actually. So, funny story is because of once I made that decision, I'm like, you know what, guys, just stop. We're going to work this out. Either way, I'm trying to work this out. This is my decision. And then it came to the point of, okay, well, if you're doing that, then don't come around. We don't want you. We don't want Lizzy around our family.
Okay.
So if my family's listening to this, sorry, but this is what you guys did. So it was really hard. So it's
we run an honest program, right? Kid?
Yeah. And it was.
But it turned out.
Yeah, and I'll get to that. I mean, it was brutal. Sorry. It would be like birthday parties, and I would see it like on Instagram or something. I'm like, oh, we didn't get invited, or family parties, or whatever.
That is pretty tough.
And it was like, well, why am I getting punished for this, you know? And then slowly they came around.
But that will go back to what we've been taught in recovery is boundaries. And if that's their parents' boundaries, that's their parents' boundaries. And if they don't want to invite that in right now, that's their thing.
You have to learn to respect that.
You have to learn to respect it. You might not agree with it.
Right.
But
it's hurtful sometimes.
Yeah, and hurtful, but you don't know what they're going through. And, like your parents and what they've seen through. And so they're just kind of doing what they've known and what they've been taught and what they've learned through others. And so they're doing self-preservation as well, I would think.
Yeah, best they can do, yeah.
And I think that's what we're all doing is the best we can do with what we do. So you guys decide you're going to do it together.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So the first thing we started doing, it was the meetings. That was like the first step, and I really enjoyed it. I was like, that was one of the coolest things I've ever been to. Like such awesome people, such diversity, and everybody has a commonality. And it was just, you immediately felt like I'm best friends with every person in here, and I don't know one person's name.
Kind of like what you were saying.
Yeah.
You walk into a room, and then all of a sudden you feel like, oh, my gosh, I'm not so out of this world.
I'm not
different.
I hope the
Not
listeners
broken.
are really taking that in because you know what? That's not how most people think of a meeting for recovery, right? If you've never been to one, a lot of people feel like it's going to be a bunch of
sad sacks who can't figure it out.
Exactly. And why would I want to be part of that?
Yeah.
But you actually look like he's smiling when he's telling the story about like how fun it was to go to the recovery meeting.
They were, and we loved them, and that's like it turned into a date night. As horrible as that sounds, like it would be like Thursday, Friday night, whatever the home group was we were going to. We get a babysitter to come over, and we're like, "Okay, we're going to dinner and a meeting," and we did it, and we did that for like a year and a half, 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Every single week, like didn't miss an opportunity. And so during that, I found a family support group meeting that was right across from the hall from the addiction recovery meeting. So I'm like, do you care if I pop in there, see what that's about? And that's where it really changed for me. Seeing the addict side, I understood it and I got it, the addiction recovery and all that. But I I kind of still didn't feel supported there. So I found this family support group and I walked in there and a bunch of other people that were in my exact same shoes. And like everybody had said earlier, I felt like I was the only one in the world that was dealing with this. Nobody else knows what I feel like.
Yeah.
And so once I started
sometimes
going,
the spouse feels like nobody cares either because I'm not the one. I don't really have a problem. I don't have the addiction. And you it sounds like you walked across the hall and found your people, huh?
Yeah, I did. And I started attending that, and it worked out perfect. So that was our date nights. It was every Thursday night. And just going there and seeing where people were in recovery. Some people were there for the first week because somebody they loved just found out they were an addict, or they relapsed after 10 years of being clean or whatever like that. It came to the point where they asked me to be a facilitator for the group, and I did that. And
I was doing it for the addiction side,
Yeah.
so it was exciting because he's like, "Wow, we're like,
yeah,
both gonna be doing
and it would be cool because spouse would be in the addiction side, and their spouse would be on my side, and we knew them mutually, and we knew them outside of addiction, and it was really cool to see that happen.
some
And
type of ownership too of your own, like our own recovery."
yeah, and the one thing that I wish I could have got right off the bat that I didn't, that it took me a long time and a lot of pain and agony, was to find hope. And so when people were there for the first time, be like, dude, you're in the right place. You're doing the exact thing that you should be doing. I promise you're going to find help here amongst us. And that's where it really excelled, I would say, for me.
Because I was getting that for almost 4 months, like I had gone to treatment. I was going to continuing care once a week. I had a counselor and I was attending meetings. I had that hope because I could see it. I didn't necessarily believe that I could do it myself quite yet, but it never occurred to me that like I was alone, where he was so alone.
And had no one to talk to.
Yeah.
Like family shunned everything.
Friends weren't talking to
Friends,
us.
everything. I just literally felt like I was alone and I was the only person.
That sense of community and connection, he was totally, I had a piece of it. It wasn't fully developed into what it could be or is now because I didn't have him involved and we were still like really rocky, but you need that in recovery of anything. It doesn't even have to be addiction. It could be supporting an addict. It could be having a baby, like just having my baby 5 months ago. I needed that connection and that you just need people around you.
What's the opposite of addiction, Matt?
Connection.
Yeah, there you go. Are you? Come on.
I got you.
I thought we finished each other's
sentences.
That's right. But I want to go back to something real quick because, and I've never heard this, and we've been doing this for quite a while now. You said you had to, in your meeting with your counselor out of jail, that you had to close the back door on pills. What does that mean? Have you heard that before?
Yeah. Tell us what you mean.
Okay, so step one, we admitted we were powerless, right? So I have always had a hard time with that, especially watching my sister and being at a young age exposed to like the recovery world, is saying you do have power. You just have to stop using. But for me, it was like a light bulb switched when I realized that I'm powerless when I'm in an active addiction. What I have power over is shutting the back doors. So going to doctor's offices by myself, I don't do. I have a full Ad Action Recovery Group. Rick's model is full abstinence. So I don't take allergy medicine. I don't take Benadryl. I don't take NyQuil. I don't...
anything that has sort of a sedating effect.
Yeah.
Would you take
so many.
Tylenol?
Yeah.
But
like
not
Tylenol.
not something that can alter your state of mind.
Yeah. Anything that can tickle the addict or the craving. So I don't do that. I don't go to people's houses by myself. I don't... What are some other things? Like it
sounds like where you allow yourself to work.
Yeah. Yep. I work at Action Recovery Group as the clinical director's assistant and the intake
because
coordinator.
Most nursing jobs you would
be around it.
Be around opiates and other benzodiazepines and other medicines that have addiction potential.
Yeah. And I hear that all the time is, are you ever going to go back to it? Are you ever going to do that? And I just, for me, respect myself enough now to just keep all those doors shut. Why test it? You know?
Yeah, I think closing the back door for most people, what that means is you make hardline, permanent changes in your life that remove you from any opportunity to be tempted.
Don't drive by the liquor store if you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But that's what your recovery looks like for you, right? And I think we talk about this on this. When I talk about my recovery is my recovery.
Right.
I live in a world where there's alcohol. I go to family parties where there's alcohol. And that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
My hard line is not picking it up. I mean, not doing another one.
What if you were cleaning up, helping? Because I know you said you're a helper, and there's some unfinished beers or things at the family party.
Done it.
You pick them up and throw them away?
Yep, done it. I cleared tables at Maxwell's when I was DJing, so I could get out of there earlier.
Okay.
Yeah,
So something that's interesting about that too is you get to a point in recovery where you are very far removed from that, where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm holding it like that. Almost like before you're going to use, you kind of almost get high, the sense of that.
Yeah.
You do get away from
your
that.
Brain has triggers.
Yeah, right. I do also think, though, that those big book thumpers they have these set rules, but that's not the case. It's whatever works for you.
Yeah, that's why I say it's my recovery and that's
it.
what your recovery. And I think you're setting up your own boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think once you try to test those boundaries, that's where the danger area comes. And
Now, have you So one of the things we know in psychology is that our personality is really how we perceive and interact with the world. It's kind of our autopilot.
Yeah.
So I would assume you're still a competitive person, competitive in your recovery. You want to be the best and win and do all
I'm more
of
sober
that.
than you.
Yeah, I want to see you guys fight it out later. I think I know who'll win. But how about that? That can border on kind of getting a little cocky and complacent. Have you ever been tempted to be like, I'm above this? Has that ever snuck back in a little bit?
So it's very interesting. Working at Action now, I do see myself sometimes falling into the sense of, you should just do this. This is what works. But I also know, and it's interesting you say that, because my friend posted on Facebook, ask yourself this question, are you so set in your ways that you wouldn't try something new? And I'm like, ooh, maybe I am. And so I've realized that the best part of my recovery that I do now is a moral inventory, a very thorough written moral inventory every day. And I think that keeps me pretty grounded. Granted, it's not trying something new, but I'm very honest with that process. And the humbling part that I try to keep myself going back to all the time is those making amends promptly. And I think that keeps me, I do think that definitely I could get cocky. I definitely feel like that. But I also know it to be true that a big part of my personality has changed since being in recovery.
How would you describe it? That
know-it-all part of the competitiveness in me is definitely dulled. It's still there and it still comes out a lot. I've noticed that I kind of have to reel that in, but I just want to know. I want everyone to share their opinions, and I want to just embrace it all, because I've realized that everyone has something to add to my life in a good way, and that intellectual conversation and triggering my brain and trying to have these deep conversations is what I crave in life now. That authenticity and vulnerability that people can share. And so I do think that recovery has, I don't know, would you say that to be true? That since I've been in recovery, that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
See, I like to say that my recovery is always evolving.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what's going to come down in the future, but I'm open to try new ideas and do that stuff. And I think that's what works for me, is that it is evolving.
Trying new methods of staying
new modalities,
sober,
new ways to look at a thing, and a perspective, and trying to be empathetic and trying to see the other shoe. This one's one of my favorite episodes. I know we say that every episode, and I don't want our guests to think that we say that just because they're here. This is one of my favorite episodes because we got to see both sides of the story so clearly here.
Yeah, that's great.
And I can empathize with both of them, and I can see both sides. And I think it's so wonderful that these guys figured out a way that works for them. Now, what they did is not going to work for everybody out there, but you might be able to find something in this that goes, huh.
Well, I think there's some common threads. Hope. You guys are both giving back, working as facilitators. I think you also both found your people, right? People that you can really relate to. It's not just Brian going with Lizzy to meetings, but Brian's found his own meetings. And I love the advice of your therapist, or the prediction of your therapist, which was that Lizzy, if she stays in the program and works hard, she's going to grow and develop in ways that'll make Brian feel left behind if Brian doesn't do his own development. And I would say that's true in marriage in general.
Yeah.
You know, I want to ask, have you guys done, how would you rate the state of your marriage in general right now?
10 out of 10.
Good job, Brian. That was smart. Smart move.
Definitely, though, like these deep conversations and this level of like trust and vulnerability that we have now, never did we have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I'm assuming that this has spurred deep conversations. You're doing daily written meditations. You guys are talking honestly about thoughts and feelings that most couples don't have they don't have a forced reason to do. You guys had a forced reason. It was like, we got to do this.
Yeah.
We got to get real with each other or we're going to be over with. And a lot of couples will live together for 10, 20, 30 years and never really talk to each other.
Yeah.
Have you, what's that like? Do you have, so I had a side story. I had a professor in graduate school who's kind of a weird, funny guy, and he had left me this cryptic message: "You got to call me this weekend," and I had forgotten all about it. It was like Sunday afternoon, and I was like, "Oh, I don't want to show up without having called him," so I called him at home, and he answers the phone. He says, "Hello," and I said, "Oh, hey, this is Matt. Got your message on Friday. I'm just giving you a call." "Oh, I can't talk right now. It's dialogue with my wife time. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And he hung up. And so I thought, hey, that's really cool that they have set dialogue time with boundaries.
Who calls it dialogue?
Weird psychologist. But like my point is, why do you answer the phone?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The weirdo answers the phone and says it's dialogue time. Don't bother me. I'm like, well, don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
Jeez. Anyway, but do you guys do things like that? Do you sit down on purpose and dialogue, talk, even if you're not nerdy and you call it something cooler, like, pre-sex conversation or something?
Whoa. Some people call that
wow.
foreplay.
Yeah.
We're in marriage therapy mode, Casey.
Post-coital, we could even make it very
I call that.
emotional.
Are the kids asleep?
I think something that's interesting about that is that we've always been very, very much like best friends. Even more so now. I feel like when Maiken came into our life, my daughter, she kind of came my world, and I kind of put him away. Like, I mean, obviously, I was crazy, but I think that it's been a big eye opener to just. He's a silent treatmenter, and I'm like we kind of blow up at each other. And now it's like, I don't remember the last time we really got in a fight. Like, we're very quick to say sorry. We're very, we talk every day on his way home from work. That's 45 minutes. We talk on the phone. And once the kids are in bed, we
We know
sit
you
and
do.
talk.
It's okay.
Sleep.
Matt!
Well, Casey, you said, are the kids asleep? And so
Jeez,
Yeah,
we
we
expect that from me.
We do. And that,
I'm the therapist. We talk about it all.
that's
baby.
gotten better too. So
That's gotten better too.
Better way to make
so
connection.
what's if you were to say what's the formula? Because I will say this. Let me criticize psychologists for a minute and therapy, okay? Psychologists and therapy, one of our big problems has always been really only paying attention to when things go wrong and tearing it down and breaking it apart. But we have gotten better over the last probably 10, 20 years of learning to say when things go well, are we breaking it down? Are we understanding the formula? What are the ingredients? So I want you guys to give a message to our listeners, whether they're in a marriage that's struggling with addiction or not. What are your ingredients that your marriage is going so well right now? What is that? You named a few. Let's recap. What are the things? Bullet points.
I would say my number one thing is communication. When you get bugged or suspect like an addict, it was just communicate. Don't just assume, oh, she's high again. I know it. I'm not even going to ask, and I'm going to be pissed the rest of the night. So just
like right now, are you saying our tips for right now or during that moment?
All of it.
Either.
Yeah.
I would just say communication in that time, and then now, where I wouldn't communicate, now I will. Like something's on my mind or something's bothering me or I need help or something, I'll immediately just ask. I won't assume.
And part of communication is these deep conversations that I was talking about. It's like I do my own individual study of with religion and with spirituality, and I immediately share those things. I don't just keep. We just continually bounce these like broad and.
But I think that's
grand.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's
It is.
what that is, because you're willing to share something that's deep inside that you believe with someone else, and you don't share that with a lot of people. So if you have that one person to be vulnerable with, I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And having fun together. That's something huge that we definitely had fun before, but I think it's something that, like, as a whole family, we have not let kids slow us down, and we couldn't. When we had Mike, and I think we kind of allowed that to happen. Like, oh, we've got a baby now, and we have to like do this. But like, we've taken her to Ireland twice. We take our newborn little baby and our almost 5-year-old golfing all the time with us, and we don't let that stop us.
Yeah,
and it's good for us.
That's amazing. So now, what's Thanksgiving look like at your parents' house?
It's fabulous. I
So
mean,
good.
literally, to
circle back to that.
Circle all the way back to that. Since we talked about it earlier, it was slow. It wasn't just immediate. Oh, all of a sudden, everybody just
with his family,
with my family, everybody just dropped the curtain and say, "Okay, welcome back. How's everything going?" It was slow. One by one, slowly, people started coming around, and then now my sister, her husband is an addict, and she just found out just this last year. And I spent hours on the phone with her, and one of the things she said, and she was one of them who has never said anything. And she said, "I am so sorry for the way I treated you during this time. I had no idea what you were going through, and I just made assumptions." And she full on apologized. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, that's what happened. It was the past, and I'm in a better mindset, so I'm not holding a grudge. I'm like, life's moved on. I understand. And
But you don't let her come over, right?
No.
Wow, Matt! What's wrong?
And you know what, though? We've learned through recovery that the best people that we know are in recovery. The
Absolutely.
most amazing, big-hearted, beautiful souls that we've ever met, we found through recovery. So because this has happened to their family, we know what that looks like. We know that our relationship with his sister and her husband is going to be 10 times better. Even though they were in the rock bottom of everything hitting them, I'm like already jumping forward 6 months in my head, like, I can't wait. This is going to be beautiful. We're going to be like so much closer.
What's going to make it that way?
The vulnerability and authenticity of getting real with yourself. In turn, you just want to share that. You want to share those parts of your life with other people, that connection.
Yeah.
I love it. This has been such a great episode, and I've really enjoyed watching these two interact throughout the whole podcast.
Yeah, you can tell that they are in sync.
Because normally when somebody comes in here, they'll turn and talk to us, but they've been just talking to each other.
I know.
But I think
You and
that's
I've had to fight for some
But I
airtime.
think that's so cool, and I think this story is going to give people hope. And so, if people want to find out more information, kind of about the programs that you went or what you guys have done, is there anywhere they can follow you guys?
Yeah, so actiontreatment.com or Action Recovery Group on Facebook. And I have a blog.
She needs to complete it.
Okay,
No, she's doing each of the steps, and I've been telling her for the last year and a half, 2 years, like, you need to go all 12 steps. You're on 9?
or 7.
Yeah, so there's 7
Or
steps
8.
up to there that are really good.
recoverylizzy.blogspot.com, right?
All right, I love it. Any final thoughts with you, Dr. Matt?
No, I've had a great time.
It's been a great time.
What does your intention bracelet say?
The intention bracelet, this says Hope, Love, and Family Friends. That's for Rebecca Cressman. She's on FM 100. And this one right here, this one, is that what this is?
Yeah, what's that
My
one?
daughter gave me this when I was in Pinnacle Recovery Center. She made it for me. And so she came up to me and she goes, "Dad, I made you a bracelet." And I said, "Cool." And I'm not really a bracelet guy, but I looked at it and it says, "Love and Hope." And it says, she gave it to me. And I put this on the second week I was in recovery. So I've had it on for over a year. What does yours say?
Mine says Fortify, which I kind of took when we worked everything out. Not everything, but we were on the mend, and Fortify means defend.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's defend your recovery, defend your family, defend your faith, defend what you believe in, and yeah, it's stayed on there, and I think it's cool you have one.
I love it. Lizzy, Brian, thank you very much for coming down and sharing your story. I appreciate it so much. Josh, thanks for running the show. Dr. Matt, for all that you do. If you know somebody who needs help, have them do what I did and give Pinnacle Recovery Center a call. I just might answer the phone. Project Recovery is a KSL podcast.